Have you also felt like you were born at the wrong time financially? We're going to get into that today and figure out why money feels so different in today's day and age. Welcome, new and returning Money Buddies. Thank you so much for joining in today's episode. Today we're going to be talking about all those ways that money feels different and challenging for those of us in our generation and those of us trying to grow up in today's economy. And we're also going to talk about how it seemed so much easier for our parents and our grandparents. Do you ever feel like you're just getting hosed by inflation and the economy? Do you feel like you'll never be able to reach your goals, or at least the goals that are laid out for you, right? That American dream. Well, you are not alone and you're not wrong. Things are definitely different. And I have done a lot of research in this area today, and I'm going to show you just how things are different. And then today's guest and I are going to go over how to get over that hump and that feeling so that you can feel empowered and not feel so distraught, and that you can take control of your financial situation. And that's what it's all about, controlling what you can control. So here's a layout of what we're going to talk about in today's episode. I'm going to start with a story about how my wife and I, how we feel the same way that all of you do, and that we're maybe never going to be able to buy a house, right? That's the big one. And I'm even starting to shift some of my goals around the idea that that may never happen. And then in today's research, we're going to look into how things are harder, how some things might be better, and then what we can do about all of it. And then we're going to round out today's episode with a guest, Dana Thibodeau. Dana is a financial coach who helps young professionals design money systems that actually fit in their lives. Through her business, Learn Money Financial Coaching, she teaches clients how to make confident, values-based financial decisions without getting caught up in comparison or FOMO, fear of missing out. We're going to base our conversation today around a specific scenario that is just like what we're all facing to help each and every one of you with real and actionable insights. So buckle up and get ready, because today's episode is going to be a great one to help you feel empowered and in control of your money when there's so much going on that makes it feel like we'll never be able to accomplish our goals. So let's kick it off today with the story about how my wife and I feel just the same as all of you, and that things are such a struggle right now financially. So let's kick off today's episode with a story about how my wife and I have found ourselves in such a similar situation as the rest of you. We found ourselves in a situation where we thought about buying a house, and there's also things like buying a car, renting a bigger apartment. The list goes on and on. All these things seem like the right things to do, right? They seemed so much easier for our parents, and they seemed so much easier for all those people trying to give us advice and telling us to do these specific goals. But things are different now, right? Are these people that are giving us this advice, do they really know what is going on? Do they really know how much harder things are? Because I have long thought about buying a house. My wife was definitely even much more on the train of let's buy a house, let's get a house. Even now, buying a car seems like something that's getting more and more out of reach. It's so easy to find ourselves chasing those American dream style of goals, right? Those things that we're told that we need to be chasing, like buying a nice car, buying a nice home, going on big, nice vacations, all those sort of things that we're told we need to be doing in order to live the American dream. They all seem so challenging and difficult right now. They seem so much harder now than they used to be, right? And then things started to change for my wife and I. We realized that we needed to control what we could control. We realized that we weren't going to be able to hit the goals that the American dream wanted us to chase and wanted us to hit. We realized we could hit goals that we wanted to hit and that were important to us. And sure, yes, our goals did need to adjust, but that is what's so great about personal finance, is the fact that your goals can adjust. You can go after the things that you want to do. My wife and I, we were able to go after the things that we could control. Housing was out of our control. The prices going up so much, out of control and out of our control. We can't force it to do what will work for us, so we had to make things work in a way that will work within our current reality and within the parameters that we can control. And we are so much happier realizing that we are chasing goals that truly matter to us. We're able to travel a lot more because we're not so focused on those dreams that other people are putting into our lives. We got e-bikes, and that allowed us to get out and enjoy more biking and seeing our town and travel on our e-bikes more. And we realized that we don't need to buy a house right now, both mathematically, but also so that we don't have to break our backs over a goal that isn't really a priority or a focus for us right now. And now buying a house, it could be a priority for you, but that's where you have to figure out what goals are really important for you and go after something that means something to you. And now you're probably wondering how all of this can apply to you. Well, today's research segment is going to show you how you're not alone and how so many people are also going through this right now. And then in today's case study, which we're going to discuss with Dana, we're going to really bring things home about how you can be hopeful and encouraged and how you can make all of this work for you. But now let's get into the research segment so we can figure out that we're not alone and there's so many other people also going through these same struggles. Here we go with today's research segment. There's a lot to cover today, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. And of course, all these articles I'm covering today are linked in the show notes. But let's start with this first one that's on the cusp of adulthood and facing an uncertain future, what we know about Gen Z so far. Quote to share from this article says, "This generation was in line to inherit a strong economy with record low unemployment. And this has all changed now as COVID-19 has reshaped the country's social, political, and economic landscape. Instead of looking ahead to a world of opportunities, Gen Z now peers into an uncertain future." So that's really the situation we're facing. Gen Z got brought into an economy that was heading in a great direction and then suddenly changed courses very rapidly due to COVID and some policy decisions made around that. Regardless of whether stimulus checks were necessary or not, or whether interest rates needed to go as low as they did, both decisions created massive inflation and it really just shook up and changed the economy in a way that we weren't expecting. And this uncertain future for Gen Z is one of the biggest fears that I hear among us, whether it's you or talking to clients or even myself. Many people say they have no idea how they'll even be able to buy a house, or honestly, even be able to get an affordable, nice apartment. It's uncertainty that makes the future so difficult for everyone in our generation. The next article is going to mention that millennials and perhaps Gen Z may have some things that are better financially than previous generations. I don't fully agree with this, that the picture is completely all better, and I'm going to show you why with some feedback on some points from the next article, which is millennials are better financially than previous generations. This quote from the article says, "When adjusted for inflation, millennials appear to be in a better financial condition than Gen Xers or baby boomers at a similar point. In 2022, millennials had a median net worth of $84,000. In 2007, Gen Xers had a median net worth of $78,000. In 1989, baby boomers had a median net worth of $58,000. And now they say this was adjusted for inflation, so all of that was in 2022 dollars. And that meant millennials had a net worth that was 8.4% higher than Gen X and 46.2% higher than baby boomers at those ages." And I think the point that the article is missing here, and it does start to get around to it towards the end of the article, so I'll give it some credit, but even though millennials and Gen Z have a higher net worth initially at the same point, relative, adjusted for inflation, all those sort of things, the difference is that things are so expensive now. The article goes on to say that rent prices are a common pain point for millennials, and the data backs up these complaints. The median rent for 2024 for midpoint millennials is $1,500. Comparatively, midpoint Gen Xers paid a median rent of $1,251. And in 2008, a midpoint baby boomer paid a median rent of $1,174 in 1990. That difference is $230 and $307 respectively, meaning millennials pay $2,760 more a year on average than Gen Xers did and $3,684 more than baby boomers did. And I'm sure this is even more pronounced for Gen Z as they're becoming adults and we're beginning to find places to live and trying to rent an apartment. And that's where the pain point lies for all of us. That's the pain point we're feeling. The pain point comes when prices are rising faster than anything you can do to help out your situation. And sure, our net worth at the same sort of point adjusted for inflation may seem higher, but that is when you begin to look at those charts of how inflation is beating out salaries increasing, and we're just not able to make the money that we need to be able to keep up with these rising prices. The next article I found highlights how debt may actually still be a problem for Gen Z, student loans or otherwise. And this article is just calling us out. The title of this article just says, "Gen Z has a serious debt problem." Quote from this article says, "Many are burdened with student loans due to the rising cost of higher education, and they've faced economic instability as they start their careers and often struggle to find secure and well-paying jobs. Gen Zers who are now adults have faced severe economic volatility, especially in the aftermath of COVID-19, shifting the financial realities that earlier generations met before them." And I think that is what has played the largest role in the financial issues that Gen Z is facing, the volatility that came from COVID. I think that's what makes us all so nervous and unsure. Is the government going to change something and make housing prices balloon again? Are they going to try to crush them to make it so we can afford them? How is this all going to play out? Because a quote directly from this article talks about how skyrocketing housing prices and stagnant wages make it hard for Gen Z to afford rent or save for a down payment. And that is extremely true. The next quote here says, accumulating debt at a young age can hinder their ability to build wealth and achieve financial stability later in life. Late payments and defaults can damage credit scores and affect their ability to get student loans for future things like a car or a house. And another quote here says, if Gen Z is forced to delay financial milestones like buying a home or retirement, the middle class is going to only continue to shrink. And honestly, I think delaying milestones might not be a bad idea if you have a goal that you want to work towards. It may be a tough task, but are there other opportunities that you could go after? Is there some other opportunity that you need to take advantage of, like taking the risk to start your own business when you're a little younger in life and you can afford for it to go broke if it doesn't work out and you can afford to recover from that? I think there's just different opportunities that are going to be present for us that weren't present for previous generations, whether it's around technology, taking risk while you're young. Maybe you don't need to buy a home and put all of your net worth in that home. Maybe you can build up a sizable net worth and a retirement nest egg in a regular investment account instead of in your home. I think that might be one thing that's often overlooked, is that a lot of people who push the home buying narrative have a lot of their assets tied up in a home, and that's their retirement plan. So there may be other opportunities that us in Gen Z need to figure out how to take advantage of. We may need to delay milestones, but that may be okay because there might be something else that we get to do that's actually a more meaningful milestone for our own goals and values. Buying a home might not be that meaningful when you love to travel and you don't want to be tied down somewhere and you may want to move in order to travel. I know my wife and I have thought about the idea of maybe if we change jobs every 5 years or whatever, maybe we move across the country so we can travel that area of the country while having a home base that kind of moves with us as we're renting. That's just an idea that we had that maybe that resonates with you. And instead of buying a home, you would rather rent somewhere for 3 to 4 years, find a new job that'll move you somewhere else, rent for 3 or 4 years and see that area of the country, and just keep doing that because you can do whatever you want if you have a plan that works for you. But let's continue this momentum in the right direction, because enough on the downer news and sad situations that we face, because things are difficult. And please don't get discouraged because you're not alone. If you need to talk to someone, please send me an email and then build the momentum and move in the right direction. And let's get some upbeat and positive articles in here that I want to talk about next. This one says that Gen Z's unique money mindset and approach to financial wellness. Talks about how Gen Z is tech savvy. Gen Z embraces online tools. And there's awareness of the concerns of job security. Being tech savvy can be extremely helpful. You can use it to your advantage to help you automate your finances. You can use it to automate your 401k contributions, because if you get in early and understand how to use these tools, putting away money for retirement can become a strong and easy habit that you can keep. And that tech savviness of all of us in Gen Z can be a huge help, because you understand the importance of emergency savings and retirement savings and the employer match, and you know how to automate it. That's super exciting. Use the tech savviness and the online tools to your advantage, and be willing to put in some effort to understand them, because they're not that hard. They're built to help us with our money, and they can be a great way to get ahead by leveraging some of these online tools and these different budgeting apps and whatnot in order to help you with your finances. But it's not just as easy as saying download some budgeting app, right? There's still a lot of things that stress us all out. So how do we ease the stress and cope with all that stress? This next article from Beyond the Budget says how younger generations are easing stress with financial wellness habits. I have a couple quotes from the article to share here with you. The first one says, the focus is no longer solely on accumulating wealth, but on achieving financial well-being. Gone are the days when big paychecks define success. Today, mental clarity, peace, and control over money matters take precedence. It's hardly surprising that financial stress is affecting 61% of 18 to 35-year-olds. You just heard that right. 61% is over half. So just think about that. If you're experiencing financial stress, you are with the majority. You are just like the majority of everyone else in your age range. It's okay to feel financial stress. That's what I want to emphasize here. Money is stressful. And this next quote says, talking about money has long been seen as taboo, but that's starting to change. According to a consumer survey, 65% of people want to have more open conversations about money. And I am ecstatic to hear this. Conversations about money help in a lot of ways. You won't feel alone, and you're going to begin to recognize that you're not alone. And even if someone makes more money than you, you can still relate to similar financial struggles. We all have financial challenges, and talking about them helps us all help each other. And that's so exciting. And guess what? When you start talking about money, someone might mention something that's going to completely unlock your mind around your money and completely change your life so that you can manage money in a way that works for you. And overall, you're just not going to feel alone. So we need to talk about money more. And if we're more open to money talks, we're all going to do better with money together. You know, I've hosted the podcast Money Talk for over 4 years at this point. And my biggest driver was just that talking about money is so important. And honestly, hosting that podcast helped me more than anything because I was able to see so many unique and different financial ideas. Because if we can rely on others for help with our money, we just begin to understand money a whole lot better, and we gain real empathy and understanding for all the different financial situations that people face. And I know the beginning of this research segment was starting out a little bleak with some of the real numbers that can make things truly challenging, but let's end on a high note here. You can do it. Let's talk about money more together. It's okay to be stressed about money because, frankly, the majority of us are stressed about money. Even though things really are challenging and we're dealing with bigger numbers than any previous generation has dealt with, we can figure it out together. There's still a lot of great opportunities for all of us to take advantage of. I'm excited to bring to you today's case study where we're talking about Stacy, who's a teacher who feels like they just can't quite get by and they're just stuck in the mud and don't quite have enough money to really make a difference in their financial situation. I'm going to introduce today's case study, and then we're going to get into a conversation with today's guest, Dana, all about how she can take her situation, adjust it, and really build some momentum for a brighter and more hopeful financial future. So let's get into today's case study. So let's get into today's case study, and I'm bringing on a guest today. Her name is Dana. I introduced her at the very beginning, but she's a financial coach that helps young professionals, and I'm really excited to get her input. You're going to enjoy this interview today, and I don't want to take up too much time leading into today's interview, so let me just quickly outline today's case study so you know what we're talking about. And I'll talk about the case study in a little bit more detail during our interview, but the background is today we have Stacy, a 27-year-old teacher who feels like she just doesn't have enough money to get by. Her big question is that, how am I supposed to get by when I just don't have enough take-home pay after taxes and fees and expenses and all that sort of stuff? How do I save for an emergency fund? How do I save for retirement? A real challenge that all of us have felt at one point or another. How do we balance all of these juggling goals? How do we begin moving in the right direction? And I'm excited to bring to you today's interview and welcome Dana to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have a fun conversation today.
Yeah, and fun is definitely what this will be. We're covering a case study today that my audience is used to me going over the case studies, but we're going to bring in, I guess today we're talking about Stacy's situation, and I'll outline that more as we get into it. But I just kind of want to start with some of the things that people have going on in their lives, some of the things that young adults haven't going on. We just wrapped up the research segment of this episode where things seemed kind of gloomy and doomy, right? Let's be a little bit more positive here. What are some of the things that are better for our generation and young adults versus older generations?
Yeah, for sure. I know sometimes it can feel daunting when you just think about all of the negative sides, but there are so many good things for younger generations right now. First of all, you're young. You have so much time and freedom and flexibility. And when it comes to your money, you can really use that to your advantage. Personal finance is one of the most talked about subjects on the internet, which is a huge bonus for people right now who have all the information at your fingertips. And sometimes that can be overwhelming, right?
Yes.
But when you have access to that information, you also can find community with that. You can find resources like coaches that really can help you narrow down the information and apply it to your situation. And on top of that, compound interest. You're young. You have so much time to let your money grow. A lot of times young people now, they really value experiences over status goods. And obviously that's not the same for everyone. But I think when it comes to finding the positives in our personal finance situations, that can be a really beneficial thing to look at.
Yeah, and not just getting hung up on all the negative, because it's easy to find that out there, right? Like if you look for the negative, it's going to come flying at you way too quickly. And I like what you said there about time. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately is young adults have time to mess things up as well. Like you can take risk, you can take a chance because you have time to do the normal thing, right? Like you have time to just plow money into your 401k, but maybe you want to start a business when you're young and you have the opportunity for it to go broke and for it to not work and you'll still be okay. How have you seen that time piece be valuable in your life?
Yeah, I think for me, I started off with just following the traditional like personal finance advice and making sure that you're doing everything and investing and saving. And I learned that I can really experiment, like you said, and switch things up. Like, I am not handling my money the same way now that I was at 18 or 25. And I've also been able to take more risks, and they have paid off. And I also am in a position where, like right now, one of those risks is I have a side hustle, I have another business, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I had all these fixed expenses and had a family and people relying on my time and my money. And so using that as leverage to not only improve my finances, but also my lifestyle has been really fun to enjoy and experiment with.
Yeah, and among that abundance of opportunity is setting yourself up early because of that power of compound interest. Something my wife and I are looking at is Coast FI, where we're able to get our investment accounts to a point where they're going to do what they need to do and we'll be able to retire like a normal person, so to speak, right? And then we can do the opportunities throughout the rest of our life. So there's really multiple ways to look at this. How do we take advantage of all these different good things that we can juggle?
I think the first thing is leading with gratitude. It's so easy to look at what's hard and what's challenging, but when you can really think about all of these good things that you can be grateful for and take advantage of, it really sets you up for having the right mindset, not only with life, but also with your money. And taking advantage of those small things. For instance, like an employer match. You might not be able to contribute as much as someone who's 50 and is about ready to retire, but even just a few dollars, that really compounds and it really has a big impact. Another thing that we have as an advantage being young adults is we get to use technology and we get to grow up with it. And having like automation, the capacity to automate our finances using technology like buckets can really set you up for success in the long run, but also it's fun. Like, I love logging into my bank account and seeing my travel bucket. And when someone says, hey, you want to go on this trip, I can look in that, see that I have enough money and be like, yeah, let's do it. So really taking advantage of those opportunities and leading with gratitude, I think is going to be the best way to find the good things and make sure you're using them.
Yeah, a couple key pieces that came to my mind there as you were talking, you mentioned around technology and automation is huge. And I love that so many financial institutions are leaning into this idea of just like visibly being able to see how your money is split up with buckets, vaults, pockets, whatever term you want to use. And that's so much power. Like you said, that person is now able to see that, oh, my pet has an emergency, there's money in the account. It doesn't bother me as much, because one of the favorite lines that I've heard recently is that an emergency fund or savings cut your emergencies in half, because you have the emergency itself, but then you also have a financial emergency if you don't have the money saved. So setting up automation, using these different technology tools can be such a great thing to move you in the right direction without you having to think about it so much. How have you seen technology beyond, I guess you mentioned your vacation fund, right? How else have you seen technology help you as an advantage with your money?
For me, I definitely love like the old pen and paper, the spreadsheets, but I have tested like every single app there is out there. And one thing that I love and what my clients tend to enjoy is just being able to sync everything in one spot. You're no longer like running to this bank or that bank or logging into this account and logging into that account. Like, you have one login and you can see everything, and you don't need to get into like the nitty gritty of it. If you're someone where you don't want to be nerding out about your money all the time, you just want to log in once a week or once a month, check it out, make sure that everything is good to go. Using a service where you can link all of your accounts and see like, oh, here's a pretty graph of my net worth going up, and here's a pretty graph of my investments. It can really simplify finances for someone that doesn't want to get in the nitty gritty of it.
Yeah, it can even simplify finances for someone who does. Like for me, I tested out Monarch a month or so ago, and I was like, wow, it's like nice to not put things in my spreadsheet manually, right? And the nice thing is there's tools out there for every kind of financial person. Like I think it's called Tiller, which imports it all into a spreadsheet for you. If you are that spreadsheet person and you like to look at it that way, there's Monarch if you like to do it with just everything's built in one, right? They have a really great UI and really easy and simple to see. There's There's Crew, that is an entire app that is your bank account that does all the automation for you. There's really whatever you want to use or whatever style you have, there's an app out there that's going to help you manage your money in a way that's good for you. And that's what's really cool. And that is one of the huge and massive positive things for younger generations is they understand these tools. It's not hard to get it set up. You don't struggle with connecting your account in the same way that maybe your grandparents would, right? Like that's a huge hurdle, I'm sure, for them. But there are still hurdles for us. We talked in the research segment today, quite a few things like higher rent prices, maybe your salary's not keeping up with inflation, like those things that can really be difficult. How do we avoid getting stuck in the mud and in the bad news that we hear online?
Yeah, it can be really hard. And I want to validate that it can be difficult to not get stuck in the mud and struggle with the negative. But I think the first thing that you need to do is kind of face the realities and listening to things like this in that research segment and understanding like, okay, this is reality. It's not in my head. I don't feel like it's not just me being lazy or me being bad with my money. Like these are real struggles. Understanding that there are big challenges, but there are also big opportunities, right? Taking like one small step, taking one small action can really help you get out of any sort of rut. And it doesn't just have to be like financial, feeling stuck in the mud. It could be, your fitness journey, taking one small step, your health journey, whatever. Putting $1 into your 401k, putting $10 into your 401k, that turns into 100, that turns into 1,000, right? It compounds and it grows and it starts building that momentum.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think can be really helpful when you're feeling stuck is tracking your wins and tracking your progress. We kind of talked about those tools for tracking. I love tracking my net worth and I do it every month. Some of my clients will do it quarterly or yearly, but seeing that number grow or celebrating the small wins can really encourage momentum and help you from feeling down and stuck and like the world is, hard to get through.
And tracking your net worth can be a massive first step to just see the direction you're heading in, whether it's negative or positive. Like, honestly, who cares? It's just about the momentum and getting you moving in the right direction. And the same thing goes with putting $10 or even just 1% of your paycheck into your 401k. Is that going to make the biggest difference? No, not on the numbers front, but on the momentum it starts to build for you to feel confident to increase it to 2% and 3% and so on. And then you're getting the full company match. Then suddenly you're making sure you're putting enough in there that you are going to be able to retire. Just because you started with 1%, that is really what helps build the momentum. And then on the net worth piece, that's going to just start like moving you so quickly in the right direction. If you put it all in there and you see it's negative $30,000 or whatever, right? And you're in debt and you wouldn't be able to pay off your debt without going into the negative, that can really light a fire under your feet to be like, I at least need to be at zero. And then you realize, wow, I just got from 30,000 to zero. Can I keep going in the right direction? And it's just going to kind of work like magic, honestly. I think net worth is one of those magical tools that we all have that we should be using.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to that, like facing realities and getting clarity on your current financial situation. Sometimes that's enough to really spark that fire and get you moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make progress when you're hiding under a rock and refusing to open your bank account and, take a look at the realities of what it is.
Yeah. Hiding under a rock isn't going to get your finances anywhere. But it is still difficult to feel like we can even get ahead or make progress. And I want to introduce here the person who we're going to call Stacy from today's case study. Let me give a little bit of background here. Stacy is a teacher. She's making about $67,000 a year. She has $40,000 in student loan debt with about just under $400 in a monthly payment, $1,200 in rent, and $325 in a car payment. And a little more detail, after she pays all of her expenses, there's about $245 left. She's not currently getting her company match, but here's the main quote that I want to share with everyone and kind of what's going to help frame the rest of our conversation. Stacy shares that she says she's making decent money. She still feels like she's drowning. She wonders how she's supposed to save for emergencies, invest for retirement, and pay extra on her loans with only $245 left at the end of the month. She wonders if there's actually a way forward, or is she destined to be behind forever? So Dana, you hear a story like this, right? It's probably pretty common. They're wondering, how in the world am I supposed to actually do something with this money when it's so little? When someone feels like they can't ever get ahead with what they're actually bringing home, what are some of those ways that they may be able to make some shifts and move the needle?
I want to start by saying you're right. This is all too common. But there is hope. There's hope for the Stacy. There's hope for you if you relate to Stacy's situation. And it might seem like that $245 isn't going to get you far, but it is going to move the needle if you put it to use in the right ways. The first thing I kind of like to look at is there's two sides of most financial equations. And in this situation, we have income and we have expenses. Stacy could decrease her expenses, and that would help give her a little bit more money to put towards her, or she could increase her income. And that might look like getting a roommate, downgrading her car, right? Trying to negotiate some of her payments. But I think for her, in her situation, it might be easier because it sounds like she already feels really tight and constrained the way she's living. It might be easier for her to look at the other side of the equation and look at increasing her income. And maybe that means a summer job. And it could be a fun summer job. Like if I had the summers and I wanted to do something that would like help me relax, I would go work at an ice cream shop, or, something that's fun, something that you can enjoy. She could take on tutoring and online jobs. And I'm sure Stacy in this situation has thought about all of those things, but it's hard to take action on them when you don't know how to apply that extra money to actually move the needle, right? There's something about just going and making more money, but if you're not putting it to good use, it's not going to do anything for you. Yeah, so adding margin into her financial equation and using it intentionally is really going to get her further. I also think having a mindset shift, like something is better than nothing.
That's a great point.
If you have no emergency fund, like that's an emergency. But having a $5 emergency fund, that might help you through a flat tire. Having $1,000, that might help you through a few things. You don't have to have the full $10,000 or 6-month emergency fund right away. Because when you think about that, it can be really daunting and like thinking like, I have $200 to put towards this. That's going to take forever. But learning that having something small, taking small steps is better than nothing. I think that's going to be the biggest help for Stacy.
Yeah, those were all a lot of great points. You mentioned see if you can move the needle on either side. And I feel like so many times we get stuck on that expenses piece. And that's where money feels so guilty and shameful, right? Is that we feel like we're not allowed to spend money on things we enjoy. And I don't know, my wife and I, we love our soda, right? And we have just accepted the fact that that is an expense in our life and it's okay. Like we would rather cut down in other areas by like having our Amazon cart day where we will go through our cart for the week and remove most things because we don't need most things. And so that's where we're saving money instead of cutting back on the couple dollar soda or whatever it is, right? But I also like the income piece because so many people overlook that. And it's not terribly difficult to go make some extra money with maybe, like you mentioned, a part-time job at an ice cream shop, which wouldn't be good for my health because I also love ice cream. But it could be a way to make some money, have some fun. And if it's maybe part-time or full-time, you might get to decide a little bit more what that actually looks like because it's not your main job. Like if you're just doing it in the summer, you can tell the owner of the ice cream shop, hey, I can work these days and that's it. And if it works for them, then great. But you can have a little bit more control because you're not necessarily fully relying on the income, but it can be the thing that moves the needle for you to get that emergency fund or to get some investment savings started. And maybe you just need to also ask for a promotion at work. Maybe there's something that should be on the horizon for you that you need to push for a little bit more. So there's ways to move the needle on both sides of that. And I think that's such a great way to look at it because so often that's where we get stuck and really get down on ourselves is if we have to do nothing but cut expenses because you can only cut so far. Like we have to live. We have to have money in order to live, and we can only go so far back. But the next thing I want to talk about is kind of one of these big purchases that is in the back of all of our minds and every young adult listening to this. And I've felt pressure on this. My friends have. I'm sure you've probably had like thoughts around this topic. But Stacy in this story is feeling pressure from her parents to buy a home and settle down, buy a home near family or maybe wherever it might be, right? How do we deal with societal pressure around like the American dream or our money goals when money can seem so difficult and different to do those normal goals? It's a big question.
I hate to say it again, but reframing your mindset can really help with so many of these struggles. Buying a house, saving up a down payment as a goal and not a rule. I think for so many people in their 20s or so right now, they're hearing from their parents like, oh, to be financially successful, you need to buy a house. They're hearing from society that you need to save for a down payment and you need to buy a house. When in a lot of cases, it's cheaper to rent right now. And in a lot of lifestyles for young adults, makes more sense to rent. Like if I'm going to be gone traveling for 3 months in the summer, I don't want to be paying for a house that I'm not living in, that kind of thing. So reframing it is like, hey, that's a great goal. And if that's your goal, that's amazing, but it's not a rule. But I also understand that it's not as simple as just like, oh, you don't need to explain yourself to your parents. Like, there's going to need to be some explanation there. And I think to help is getting really clear on your personal values and on your why. Like, why am I doing this with my money? Why are my values what they are? And my money should reflect them. They shouldn't reflect someone else's values, whether that be society or your parents. So you can use phrases like, yeah, I plan to save for a down payment, but right now I'm not prioritizing that. I plan to do this, but right now I am prioritizing X, Y, Z. Using value-based spending to really explain your priorities can help reduce that guilt. And then another thing that I think can be helpful is being vulnerable and using real numbers. Saying things like, hey, my rent is this much and it's actually cheaper than a mortgage. Or, you know what, I would love to save for a down payment, but I'm currently paying off thousands of dollars in debt. That can really like shut someone up. You know, when you put real numbers to it and you're vulnerable with it, hopefully her parents would understand that and get off her back a little bit.
Yeah, because their $800-900, maybe like $1,500 mortgage payment looks easy to them, and then you say, well, my rent right now is $1,300, and if I were to go buy a house with similar bedrooms and bathrooms, right, it would be $2,800. The math is more obvious when you paint it with a number like that, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize what a mortgage actually costs in today's day and age, right? There's some real value in doing the math and actually understanding for yourself the mathematical decision behind it. But I love the idea of, what's your value right now? Is it getting out of student loan debt so you don't have that burden hanging around your neck? Is it traveling? And yeah, renting is a better option. So you have this tiny studio apartment that you barely own anything because you're barely there. And why would you need to save for a down payment on a big house that you can't even put anything in because you don't own anything? So there's a lot of great options and flexibility there that can take that pressure off you. And then, yeah, at a certain point, it's also like, who cares what other people think? Like, that's kind of a reframing point you have to get to too, of like, well, I'm not going to do that right now. That happened for my wife and I, because we were like, maybe we need to put this housing line item in our budget. We were throwing just small little amounts of money at it. And we got to the point where there was some savings there, but it was never going to be a down payment. And we were like, why are we doing this? Like, we may end up moving for jobs. Like, we don't plan on being in this area for a super long time. Like, that savings could go towards a lot of other things. So we just used the money for a different goal. And that's what's kind of cool too, is even if you have money for a different goal and then you decide, oh, I should look towards buying a house, you can move your money around. That's what's so fun about all this, is that nothing is set in stone and completely locked away.
Yeah, one thing that's pretty common right now is once you learn about like the power of compound interest, young adults are deciding like, hey, I'm going to wait to save for a down payment and I'm going to invest as much as possible right now so that I can retire early.
Yep.
And then I can look at buying a house once I've already put that money into the market and had it working for me for a while. And like you said, you can change your mind, you know, you can change your goals.
Well, yeah, and a home is really kind of just an asset point or an asset location, right? A little bit like you have some value in that. And you could move money from your investment portfolio over to your house, right? Like if it grows a lot, you could just use that money to then buy your house. And there's just a whole bunch of options that come from that. But I do want to move into helping people use momentum. And in the case study that we're reviewing today, Stacy put away some money that came from the COVID stimulus payments. And that was a big win for her. She was able to get a small amount of savings that's kind of stayed around. But how do people recognize the good things that they do with their money and build on this momentum?
My favorite thing to do with myself, my friends, my clients, is to plan how you're going to celebrate your wins before they even come, and then throw in some extra wins in between. Having a plan of like, hey, when I pay off this debt, this is what I'm going to do to celebrate, can really keep that momentum going. And then maybe you have like a mini celebration every few $1,000s that you pay off. I think that's a really fun way to do it and a really impactful way to keep that momentum going. The other thing that I wanted to say is it's important to be grateful. And one of my new favorite phrases is compare down, don't compare up. A lot of times when it's hard to avoid comparison, right? Like I want to tell you all to don't compare your financial situation with someone else's, but I know we're all going to do it. But a lot of times we'll compare to the person who's doing better than us or the people we see on the internet who are doing better than us. And we forget to think about like, all of the situations that we were in before or that other people are in that you have already overcome, and celebrating, those good things and recognizing how much better off you are than your past self, I should say, or how much better you are off than someone who hasn't even looked at their money yet, I think can be really impactful.
Yeah, that's a great tip, because you might be sitting there saying, well, I don't have a house, I don't have $300,000 in my retirement account. But you could also be sitting there saying, I no longer have $80,000 in student loan debt. Like, think about all the money you've made and where it's actually gone. And if that's doing what you want your money to do, whether it's paying off debt or saving for a home or saving for retirement, if you're actually working towards those goals, you should be excited. And I love the idea of planting in little celebrations there, whether it's money or any sort of different journey or area of our life. Planting in those little times to celebrate can go a long way. We did that with my wife's PA school. She had a test every single month on some different category and some different area of health, right? Which was like, I don't know how she did it, but after each test, we would go get ice cream to celebrate her passing another unit. And that was super fun. And you could do that with your money. Maybe you have that treat that isn't super like financially savvy, right? But it's something you really enjoy. So when you get to that $1,000 milestone for each step in your emergency fund, you set aside some money and you go enjoy achieving that goal. I love that idea. And that's such a good way to build momentum. How powerful is this momentum in continuing to move forward with our finances?
Only the most important thing.
Right?
Momentum, it's everything, right? Like, how hard it is when you have like built a habit and then you get sick and you come back after being sick and you're like, where did all my good habits go? Now I'm sleeping in and I'm like sitting on the couch all day. Momentum is the most important thing. Like money, automations, small actions, building that confidence, it all compounds. And it's one of those tools that help successful people be more successful, and it helps you be more proud of your finances.
And it is everything. Like, if you can keep your momentum and your habits moving in the right direction, that is a huge deal. And we're moving towards the end here of our interview time and our interview segment. I want to ask a couple of questions here to wrap us up. One of them is going to be, what's one thing that you suggest that people start thinking about when they're just trying to get started? If this is the first time they've thought about money and they're just getting started, what do you usually tell people?
Everyone's first step is likely different, but getting really clear on where you are right now. Doing like an audit of your finances, making sure that you know where you are is a great first step. Don't hide under that rock. Make sure you are okay with where you stand and like find peace with it. And then learn everything you can. It's not always an action item. Sometimes it's just about learning. And I find that when people get curious about money, they tend to learn so much. There's so much information out there. And then the steps just fall into place.
Yeah, just go out there and learn. Figure out where your money that's coming into your life from your income is actually going with that audit, and understand where your expenses are going. Understand your net worth. That can be a great piece of that audit and building that picture for you to work with. But Dana, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed both tackling some of the good things that are going right for young adults with money, tackling Stacy's situation where, just like so many people, they feel like they're just stuck right on that precipice of not being able to get ahead, and talking about some of the ways they can deal with that. And then we really summed it all up with taking that powerful momentum of those small wins and just going off to the races with it. That was super fun there too. How can people connect with you online if they want to learn more?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love talking about money, so this has been really fun. You can find me at Learn Money with Dana on Instagram and socials. You can find me at my website, danathibodeau.com, and everything you need to know is on there.
Fantastic. Well, that does it for today's interview and conversation around today's case study. Dana, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much to Dana for coming on the show and helping dive into today's case study. I know I enjoyed that interview. Everyone listening, please let me know what you thought with a comment on YouTube or Spotify of today's conversation. Let me know what you thought about the case study and what piece of momentum and financial win you're going to take from today's episode. But we're rounding out the episode here. This has been a great one about how things are just different. Things are harder for younger generations than they were for our parents and grandparents. But the main action item for all of us to take away today is to write down 3 financial goals that you think you should have or that you've been told to have, and then think about who is telling you to have that goal. And then use that as a method to find the goal that is truly yours. Who's telling you to have the goal? Make sure it's you, and make sure it's a goal that's aligned with your values. But today we talked about a lot. We've talked about how my wife and I have been able to adjust our goals and find what really matters to us. You need to be careful to not chase goals that others are putting in your path, like the American dream, so to speak. You might not want to buy a home, and that's okay. You don't have to force it. And then the research segment today helped us paint a picture that things are different. And I really want to emphasize that you're not alone. The majority of people in our generation feel financial stress, and that's okay. And then we rounded it out with a great interview with Dana. She brought a lot of positive insight into what we can do today and what we can do within our control to build momentum and make some progress towards a better financial future. And if you have any comments or questions, let me know and leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify. But that does it for today's episode. I hope I was able to make the seemingly complex world of financial planning a little clearer for each of my fellow money buddies. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. And hey, quick heads up. This podcast, it's meant to be educational and it's for entertainment purposes. It's not personalized financial advice for your specific situation. So before you go out and make any big money moves, make sure you chat with a qualified financial professional who knows your full financial picture.